we're seeing the effectiveness of that personal evangelism, of that making people understand that their place is to not even just invite ones to the church, which is step one, but to be the church.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Intentional Churches podcast, which gives you practical wisdom and insight into leading your church and aligning to the Great Commission. We've got a great episode in store for you today, but before we jump in, I want to invite you to consider attending the Intentional Churches conference with your entire staff team next April. So at IC, we believe that the Great Commission should be a personal mission statement for everyone in your church, and this is the heart behind the Intentional Churches conference. So the conference is priced lower than many other church leadership conferences and is designed with your whole team in mind. And the conference is conveniently located in the Midwest this year, so make sure you visit intentionalchurches.com/podcast for all the details and to register there. Well, like I said, we've got a great episode today, and as usual, I'm joined by my good friend Doug Parks. Hello, Doug.
Hello, Erin. How are you?
I'm good. And Doug, would you like to introduce our guest today?
Yeah, Larry Kelley is joining us from Houston. Larry, if you would just share with our listeners a little bit of your personal story, and then we'll jump over to talking about the church here in a minute. So,
sure, absolutely. Well, I like to say that I'm kind of living, breathing proof that God likes to use the foolish and the weak. I think that I was the subject as Paul was writing that. But my wife Gina and I, we have 6 kids that we homeschool, and try and live a life marked by obedience and teaching them to do the same. Let's see, I've been at New Hope Church for over 16 years now. I actually started as a video editor. I used to burn our Saturday night lessons onto a DVD to push play at a YMCA on Sunday morning. I've just done my best in subsequent roles to just continue serving the bride of Christ. So just happy to be here, happy to share any of the things we got going on.
That's great, man. Our younger listeners going, what is a DVD?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Well, Larry, why don't you tell us a little bit about New Hope? Give us a little history of the church, multi-sites or not. Where are you now? Just give us some context for New Hope.
Yeah, absolutely. As Doug mentioned, we're in Houston, Texas. Pastor Tim, about 35 years ago, answered a call to plant a church south of Houston in an area called Pearland. And for many, many years, we had a faithful few coming. And then all of a sudden, God just decided to open the floodgates and increase numbers. We had been meeting in strip centers and school auditoriums and things like that. Got ourselves a permanent building in a really great location. And when we did that, God just opened the doors and we were overflowing out of that, couldn't fit, decided to actually take a risk and sell that property and move to an adjacent town called Manville, Texas, where each day that we gathered, I think we doubled the population of Manville. So a lot of people raised their eyebrows at that move, but I tell you what, before the boxes were unpacked in that location, Pastor Tim was already setting his sights on the next hill that we were going to take, and talked about opening up another campus. So that was our first step into multi-site. And as I mentioned, we started by meeting inside of a YMCA auditorium for a couple of years. If you are a church that does set up church, God bless you. We are very thankful for that move. It was awesome, but we're also very thankful to be in a season beyond that. Let's see, since then, we've added 3 additional campuses to that. Our most recent, very cool story actually being that first permanent location that we had. So we got to come back home. They say in Texas, go big or go home. And God opened the door that day to do both, which I think is just a really cool thing. And then currently we're working on campus number 6. We're in the design phase, getting ready for that. And then, just all of that growth brought all kinds of complexity. And so we've just been learning and growing through that and continuing to do so, just learning and growing.
Wow, I love that. Thanks for sharing. So you've been connected to Intentional Churches, and you did what's called in IC language a lap. Doug, would you just kind of talk about what that is, just briefly for a second?
Yeah, part of our set of tools that we give to churches is a team set of tools, and really is about how do we have the right strategic conversations, the right order, so that we can prioritize and sequence our right action. And so we do various ways. You can, if you're not familiar with what we do, we call it Church OS, a leadership operating system for your church. And that may seem kind of weird. And I get asked, is it a technology solution? No, not yet. But we're working on some of those things. What I would argue is every church has an operating system. I talked with a church leader yesterday in Illinois, and they have a consensus operating system, which that could be a whole podcast episode where we talk about that model. There's some operating systems that are like, the senior pastor and maybe even the senior pastor's spouse are the operating system, and they go up on the mountain and figure it out, and they come back down and tell everybody, this is what we're going to do and what God's leading us toward. So I would just argue everybody has an operating system. What we've attempted to do with IC, what we've built is an operating system that you can actually own and run yourself. And that's why I'm excited about this conversation with Larry and how he has taken and run with it after doing that 1 year alongside us and getting trained in that team set of tools. Yeah, man, I can't wait to hear, man. I just keep getting pictures from Tim of cool things you guys are doing. And yeah.
Larry, why don't you tell us, how have you, so you were trained in the IC stuff. How have you helped your staff buy into this organizational / team operating system? How are you thinking about that with your staff team?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to rewind just a little bit and just talk about that install, I think is the word you guys would use for putting the operating system in place. That was January of 21, and Doug and a couple other guys came in and chatted with us, and really they told us a lot of things that we probably already knew, but we really needed to hear. I wasn't in an executive role at all at that time, but I just remembered then knowing how pivotal this was going to be. It was obvious from the get-go as we started looking into the book and what you guys do. And I don't know if you remember this, Doug, but the first day of the install was actually 2 or 3 days after my son Declan was born. And I kind of had a moment where I was just sharing that I was really conflicted about whether I should even be there or if I should be at home. I have an amazing and gracious wife who pushed me and said, we know that this is going to lead somewhere big. So I made sure that I was there, and it was just awesome. And it's helped us in so many ways. And really what came out of that install was you guys helping us see 2 main things. One, that we had grown a little bit complacent in the midst of 2020 and 2021. The pressure that we had felt previous to that of kind of hitting the lid wasn't as present. And you guys kind of woke us up and said, hey, that pressure is going to build again, and it's going to come real fast. And what are you going to do about that? So that was a huge thing. And then just in general, the next thing being that we didn't recognize how much we needed that alignment, both externally and being able to have that unifying language of the one and the Great Commission engine, and the one in particular just being so life-giving for our congregation. I'm sure that you guys hear this all the time, but we have people in the lobby every weekend that come up and they're so excited, and they're like, he's here. The person I've been praying for, my one, is right over here, which is just awesome to continue to see. And then also internally for our staff, we've been blessed with high capacity, awesome leaders in our church, but just being able to divine vision and mission a little bit more means that we've been able to align ourselves better, to make sure that we're all rowing in the right direction, that we have a good plumb line to make sure that all of our ministry, our efforts, our events, anything that was going on, that we had that ability to make sure that they were all square with what we were aiming for as a church. So that was a huge thing for us just in general.
Yeah, I'm curious, Larry, because you went there to the level of, relational evangelism. You went to the unit level of one, not the church, not the big program or thing we were trying to attract ones with, but the individuals. So what that has become, I knew it was Tim, the senior pastor's heartbeat, relational evangelism, seeing people who don't know Jesus come to know them. Just give us some context. how has that affected the church, and how many people are you seeing come to Christ last few years? And who's baptizing all these people? So just give us a little bit of context around that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, like a lot of churches, had gotten to where we were filling all of our needs with staff members. We would, if we had something that we needed to do, the first answer was, okay, who do we hire to make sure that we can get that done? And I think the install also helped us just kind of look back and go, man, how did we get here to a place where we used to be? I mean, any church getting off the ground is going to be 100% volunteers. As soon as you reach the cap on what the senior pastor is able to do, he goes, I'm going to find some people. And he just pulls people left and right, and they get excited, they get motivated, they start doing things. And we had found ourselves in a place where, we had started solving that equation by always putting a staff member in there. So that's a huge one. And what you're mentioning, like making sure that it's not it's not the church, the staff, the building that's doing these things, but instead we're equipping the church, who is the people, to recognize that they are in the mission field as well, that they're surrounded by, as we talk about, ones, people who are far from God and need to hear that good news, and how do we get them to first identify that that's where they are, and then help equip them and encourage them to start doing that personal evangelism. How do we get them coming in? And again, just a lot of the language is key, like just being able to have unifying language, make sure that everyone knows, both on staff and even in our congregation, the 99 and the 1, so they know their place. And then just having that be the goal, the thing that's in front of us that we're all moving towards. I remember one of our first VIPs, the Vision Initiative projects, was about a relaunch, just making a big deal about, we're getting back together, the church's doors are open, let's do this. And we set what felt like a very audacious goal. We said we want to see 8,000 people come into our doors during that, back to school, back to church movie series, let's all get together kind of time period. And man, by the grace of God, we achieved that. And then just a little more context, 3 years later, that same set of weekends, we achieved double that. So we're seeing the effectiveness of that personal evangelism, of that making people understand that their place is to not even just invite ones to the church, which is step one, but to be the church. It's not just a drop-off program. You're gonna come in with your one. You're gonna sit with them. You're gonna ask them how it went. You're gonna take them to dinner and figure out what they felt about it and how we can get them further connected. That further connection is also things that we've been learning and growing into. So one of our other very first VIPs was that creation of the engagement pathway. We always had new people coming, but we didn't have a good metric of knowing how many, what they were doing, unless they were checking into kids and students, unless they were already getting into a place of volunteering. Like we had no idea what was happening. And so being able to track that, and then just have a very intentional front door where people come in and follow them through that process, again, all the way to baptism, baptism and beyond, but being able to really see, just the last couple of years, we had over 1,300 baptisms last year. We're at like 989 right now for this present year, and just knowing that each and every one of those is a one that was lost, and God got a hold of them. We get to celebrate with that. And to answer your question, we've also just had the awesome honor and privilege of seeing not just, again, like a drop-off program. Okay, I got them to the pastor. You guys do your job. But we've got to see fathers baptize their kids. We got to see husband and wife get baptized together, small group leaders baptizing members in their small groups. So again, just that ownership really disseminating all the way down, that we are the church, and it is a whole team effort.
That's so good, Larry. So good and so encouraging for so many of our listeners. Erin, just let me interject real quick. If you're a listener and you are not familiar with intentional churches and some of our language, VIPs Larry's talking about are just basically strategic projects, and that's our name for it. And then engagement path we've talked about before, just simple definition, the way we connect ones to Jesus, to us, and to each other. And so hopefully that'll help some of our listeners that may not be familiar with our language. Larry, keep using it, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm curious, Larry. So you've worked towards alignment really in the direction of, relational evangelism and helping people, like you said, you use the language like all the way down at every level of the church to understand their responsibility in the Great Commission. So it sounds like you've achieved way more alignment. Where do you still feel pain points in that, in alignment around the Great Commission?
As with anything that's new, the first go round, everyone's excited, and especially when you're starting to see the progress. I think that for us, right now, making sure that we are continuing to talk about it with enough frequency that everyone continues being bought in, and as we are growing, that anyone new is also being exposed to it and getting excited and going on. So yeah, I think pain points, like just making sure that I think of, just the multi-generational story that's present all throughout Scripture, but especially around like the Exodus. And you see this picture that generation one is the ones that cried out to God and God rescues them. Generation two maybe were witnesses of that, or they at least understand the fruits of what has happened. And then generation three, and this is where the Holy Spirit through Moses is telling us, man, you got to be careful. He says, you got to be talking about all of these things lest you forget the Lord who saved you out of Egypt. And if the Israelite people can forget the wonders of God that happened in rescuing them from slavery, just think about how much more prone we are to forget seeing God in our midst. So I'd say the biggest thing for us is just making sure that we're always taking time to talk about it, that we don't take for granted that okay, people have been through this. We know the structure, we know the rhythms, so we don't need to talk about it. It's always something to bring up and really reinvigorate what it is that we're doing anytime that we get a chance.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important because we get used to talking about things all the time and we feel like people have heard it. And I think one of the greatest parts of the Great Commission is it takes repetition. It's not like you do that once and you've arrived, but over and over again, as we're going, Jesus invites us into that. So, Larry, I'm curious, what's a story you have of a one in your own life and how that, would you mind just inviting us into kind of your personal relational evangelism for a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of people running through my mind. I know that there was a guy who was, we have a audio internship program with a local college here that we use as an on-ramp to get people in. And we had a guy who came in and was serving alongside of us, but wasn't really sure about where he landed. We started contracting with him after his internship ended, and then we were looking at bringing him on board. And one of the things that we do is we always just make sure we check all the boxes. Sounds a little wrong, but we make sure that we're in the right place for where their beliefs are. Are you a baptized believer? All of these things. And he said, I'm definitely on board as a believer. I haven't been baptized, and said, and now I'm in the sticky situation where it's kind of, should I do this in order to get a job? I want to make sure this is my own decision. So what we did after that day was we actually had a year-long just intentional discipleship. I sat with him once a week, every I think it was Wednesday mornings, and just answering questions, asking questions, and just a really awesome time of going through Scripture together. And then at the end of that, or we didn't set it that it was intentionally going to be 1 year. We just said, let's go until you don't have any more questions. And one day I said, hey, you haven't asked questions in a while. Is like anything else that's really hitting you? And he kind of just made a revelation. And he said, no, I don't have anything else that's really sticking out. Like, obviously we all still have little things here and there, but he goes, there's nothing keeping me. Let's do this. And so had the just absolute honor of being able to baptize him in our church after a year of that intentional discipleship, and have him be on the team. And he's a great productive member of the team still. And that's been an awesome thing. And that's the kind of story that we get to see all over the place. And it's just awesome seeing God work individually in our lives and through us.
One of the things we love to do on this podcast is give just practical insight, and we love to hear different practical insight from our different guests. And so, Larry, you've worked hard to bring alignment with your staff towards the Great Commission, and that to be kind of your aim. And I love you talked about like letting the people do the work of the church, not just staff do the work of the church. And that's such an important piece. What practical advice would you give to our listeners? And maybe think about it in different categories, like those in small churches, medium churches, and then large churches like yours. What maybe it's the same advice for all those people, or maybe it's not. How would you tell our listeners, many of whom are church leaders in some capacity, to pursue greater alignment within their staff teams? What advice would you give us?
Yeah, I think it really boils down to just having really good conversations. And it's funny, both when the team came out to do the install as well as in the book, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like we're a little bit of an oddity at New Hope. So one of the things that you guys would always say is you guys are going to save so much time on wasted meetings. And I remember I chimed in, I was like, yeah, we don't have meetings. That's part of our problem. So I think
you might be the only church in America
from the norm. Yeah,
yes.
we had a weekly get together that kind of served as a almost, if you didn't have a chance to go to service, we did some worship. We kind of had some announcements to keep people together, but weren't very intentional about that. And then we would have some kind of extra lesson. And we weren't doing a lot of the things that you need to make sure that you're taking care of in those meetings, that are your vision casting, you're giving people opportunity to evaluate what's been going on and whether we're being effective. And not only did we effectively run an event, but did that event impact the Great Commission? Did it get us further down? Being honest about that kind of return on investment, being able to celebrate wins together, unifying the language, just reminding each other of the reason why we do church. Like we didn't have that. We didn't have a lot of meetings. So for us, having meetings at all, but having the right meetings, and I would say even if you are a church that is having meetings, making sure that you're covering the right things, that you're one of the things that Matt, our coach, would always say is the gold is in the conversation. And absolutely, the gold is in the conversation, because that's where we get that alignment. That's where we process through, we wrestle through, we get to a place where we go, yes, absolutely, we should be focusing on the one, not to the detriment of the 99s, but to the place where when they see a one, they understand that we are actually talking to the 99, because we're telling them of their part to play in reaching out to the one. So yeah, just I'd say this in general, it's the right conversations, and intentional churches just makes that so easy by providing really good tools to make sure that you're having the right kinds of conversations, that you're doing the right kinds of evaluation, that you're like you mentioned, Erin, that we're having the good rhythms, that it's not a silver bullet. Like if people are looking for just that one thing, that if I do this once, we're going to be in a really good place, but that's not what's going to work. It's okay, how do we build this into our yearly and monthly and weekly rhythms to make sure that we're hitting all of those good things.
Yeah, and I do think every church, no matter the size, can benefit from your advice. I want to ask one specific question. Tim sent me a picture of somebody up on stage and a picture of the IC book on a screen in like a staff. And he said, we're in a staff meeting right now, and somebody's like, what? Give us, what was that? Like, what are you doing in those meetings? That's
Yeah, we have a monthly all team meeting now that we get together, and we do a lot of those things. But one of the things that we make sure that we keep on our list is that, again, we're going through the principles that we've pulled from intentional churches, that we're going through the language, that we're making sure that people are up to speed with where we are. And, you can hand everyone a book, and some number of them are going to read it. So we do a lot of parsing for them, make sure that they're getting the good content. But there's been a number of times that we've taken the platform during those team meetings and said, hey, listen, this is in no way elevated to the place of the Bible, but let me just tell you, this is the playbook that we're using. So if you want to have a better understanding of kind of the mechanisms behind how New Hope Church is reaching their ones, like get in this book and figure out how you can implement it more in whatever corner or ministry that you have sway over. Like there are some really good tools. The 4 helpful lists, just talking through things, making sure that you're covering what's right first, and then you're getting what's wrong and what's missing and what's confused. Like that's been so impactful in every area. We do it after every event, big or small. We do it after every season to see how it went. Like it's just, again, those conversations are absolutely the gold in terms of making sure that we become intentional. If you're not having the conversations, then everyone's kind of doing their own thing. And that's one thing I would say about the alignment is it's helped us to have a very clear vision, that we are all on the same page. We, again, have a fantastic team. You can have a great team of great individuals, but if they're not all pulling in the same direction, you're going to have some problems. Almost on the negative side, but it's still a real positive for us. Being so clear on our vision, using the Great Commission engine, making sure we're emphasizing the ones, has helped us to identify when something is out of alignment, when something is misaligned. Either it's an event that's not pulling in the right direction, like it's fun, people really enjoy it, but maybe it's not getting ones in the door, or even team members. We've had, throughout the organization, just various team members that after hearing this is what our vision is and having such clarity on it, if they can't get behind it, they can still be really good people. But we've learned that it's okay if really good people aren't good on your team to be able to say goodbye to them. It's
Yes.
It's a tough thing. It's never fun, especially when you can still acknowledge, man, you've absolutely got a calling, like God is using you, but if you're not in alignment with what we're doing, you are inhibiting what we're trying to do, what we feel like we are being called and led by God to do for our communities.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. Larry, thank you so much for all you've shared, and just love hearing the journey your church has been on. And it just sounds like you keep looking to God, and he keeps just supplying everything you need. So
amen.
Yeah, just love hearing about that. And Doug, as per usual, thanks for your perspective. And to our listeners, thanks for listening to the Intentional Churches podcast. I just want to remind us that the Intentional Churches Conference is next April, and it's designed for your whole team. So make sure you visit intentionalchurches.com/podcast for all the details and to register there. We'll see you next time.